Hey guys, welcome back to Cuda Cave. So today's episode is going to be totally different. I'm not going to touch car on this one. This is a totally different project. I've got material, I've got steel, I've got a welder, I've got everything that I need. What I'm going to do is actually take an old gazebo. Unfortunately, we live in southern Ontario. I'm kind of out in the country here, and we get some big winds. Well, those big winds ripped the hell out of this gazebo that we had. So what I'm going to do is take the remnants of the steel that I have of this gazebo, and I'm going to turn it into a canopy bed for my wife and I. We've always wanted one. I've got the materials, so why not build it? So we're going to build a canopy bed, bed frame, out of the old gazebo parts. I'll flip the camera around here, I'll show you what I'm working with, and then the measurements, stuff like that, and we'll just build this as we go. And hey, it's reduce, reuse, recycle this stuff. I'd rather use it rather than throwing it into a scrap heap, melt it down. It's thin material, it's not worth anything. So why not reuse it? So I'll flip you around and we'll show you what we got. All right guys, so here's the remnants of the gazebo. If you can see here, it ripped it apart here. We got a couple bends way up in there. One of the supports that go across, it's ripped way up in there. It's ripped apart. So I'm gonna reuse this stuff. The measurements of a queen size bed are 5 feet 60 inches by 80 inches. So that's kind of what I'm working off of. What we have in our bedroom is actually, it's a 1.5-story house, so we've got the slanted roof and stuff like that in the second floor where our master bedroom is. So what I'm going to do is take that measurement of the floor to ceiling in there, come down about an inch, inch and a half, and then we'll build around the bed and the ceiling to those measurements. What I have is actually, it's about 79 inches from floor to ceiling. So I'm gonna go a little bit lower because I wanna reuse the caps right there on the ends of those. So what I'm gonna do is actually cut these down, and I have to mesh these together so I can get 80 inches so that we can go across the length above. And then I'm gonna use a bunch of this smaller stuff in here to go across the foot and headboard. So let's get started, let's stop talking, and we'll build some stuff. So I've grabbed one of these shorter ones here, so it's got a foot on it. I think this was actually corner pieces that were kind of decorative. So I want to reuse this piece, make this a full 80 inches. So we're going to cut it off, we're going to weld them together, make 80 inches, because that's the size of the bed. So I want to cut this end off, I want to cut the foot off, I want to cut the end off of this end, but I'm going to reuse that cap like I was saying. So what we'll do, I'll just go ahead, we'll cut all this stuff down. That way we end up with the bare tubes. We can move on from there. So as you can see here, the tubing is just a gauge steel, really thin. So we'll turn the welder way down when we do this, just enough to get good penetration, make sure that things don't fall apart. I may or may not put a strap around it and weld it back here. But the first thing we gotta do is clean the paint off of this, and then we'll make a full 80 inches out of all these pieces. So I'm just gonna go ahead, I'm not gonna bore you with it, it's just grinding the paint off the metal. Trying not to get the metal too thin. So here's our end pieces. The feet had extra support in there, so the cutoff saw was working a little hard to go through that. Not terrible because it's thin metal. But there's the cap. They only had it tacked in 4 places, but I think that'll be a nice addition on the canopy bed right up at the very top. So I'm just gonna go ahead, I'm gonna grind these down, and then we'll measure for our 80 inches and make the cut. All right, so here we go, guys. Everything's cleaned off both ends. And so I went ahead, these little caps that we're gonna put on the uprights, clean the welds off the back. These are the before. Like I said, they're only tacked in four different places. Probably do that again, it's only a decorative touch. But, so we wanted to make sure all the paint was off there so the weld can get in. Paint, weld, rust and weld, they just don't mix. So I'm going to move some stuff out of the way here, and we're going to line these up so that they're square. We only need 3, They're 27.5 inches long, so that gives us a little bit of cutoff on the end. So I'm just gonna go ahead, set up here, and we'll weld them up. So guys, I did just a little bit of preliminary testing with the welder to see how it would react with this thin metal. Well, it's warm. But yeah, as you can see, we got a little bit, we got penetration, but the welds are just, they're not right. So I'm playing with the settings, the wire speed, stuff like that. So as you can see, as I flip around here, this one here, I found the setting that I'm liking, and so we'll keep on rocking with that. And by the way, if anybody's wondering what I'm using for a MIG welder, it's just a little Lincoln SP100T, and these are the settings that I found that's going to work best with welding that thin metal. It's not unlike the work that we've been doing on the CUDA. So right here, there's my gas. It's an argon mix. So we'll just keep on going with this. I'll show you the next setup, how I did that, and then we'll weld it together, and we got the rest of them that we got to go. All right, guys. So here's the one that we just welded up. So what I want to do, I want to make the next one up to this, so that we can extend these pieces, end up with 80 inches or thereabouts, that we can cut down to 80 inches, the size of the bed. So if you see these pieces, yep, they're painted, they're really thin material, not unlike sheet metal for vehicles. So like I said, we found the good setting on the welder, we'll just keep on going with that. Unfortunately in these, because they have insert nuts in these, if I lay that flat on the table, now we end up with a little bit of rise, stuff like that. So I want to make sure that I'm keeping everything centrifugal, everything in line. So if you see right here, there's the cert nut on this one. So I want to make sure that the cert nut is actually up and facing the same direction all the way along. Well, it'll come in handy too if I need to mount anything to these or whatever the case might be. At least then these cert nuts are there. I have the hardware for it, so we can just do whatever we want as far as building. But as far as lining these up so I got a straight true, I don't want to just slap it down and away we go. Thing is that when you weld it, if things are going to start to move, you're going to end up with a unstraight or untrue piece of metal. So what I want to do is actually line this up as best as I can. I've got a piece of aluminum here that's actually very straight and true. So I'm just going to put this on the back side of this. Put my C-clamps, put that on there. And we'll clamp this together so that when we go to weld, everything stays together, true, nice, and we end up with a very straight 80 inches thereabouts once we cut it off, but everything's straight. We don't have to worry about it looking like it's a bow or an S because we're going straight with this. So right now, I'm kind of liking what's here. Unfortunately, I got a clamp here, so it's rising up just a little bit. So let's move that clamp down. That's fitting a little bit nicer. I'm going to grab a couple more C-clamps. I want to come in somewhere around here, and I can't clamp too hard because the metal is thin. We'll end up putting a little dimple in the metal. But that's fitting a little bit better. And it's not a big project. This is just a small little tinker project, but it's something that I got the leftover steel, so why not use it up? So yeah, that's fitting actually really nice. We'll grab our square. We'll just come across the back side here. We'll line it up. And it's sitting just a little bit off, but I think that's because of the dimple in the metal. But for the most part, that's actually pretty darn good. So I'm just going to grab my welder. And unfortunately, because of the metal being so thin, I can't run just a straight bead on it. So I just want to put a couple tacks. I need a ground. Ground would be great, because without the ground, we don't have connectivity. Once I find a good ground point. So we'll clamp it back down on the end here. I know that's clean metal, that's going to give us a good ground in there and don't trip. So let's grab a welder again. And we'll just go ahead and we'll put a couple tacks in there. Let me get you just a little bit closer, you can actually see what I'm doing, okay? Alright guys, so I got you nice and close in here. So this is the seam that we want to weld up. So I'll just grab my welder and you can see what I'm doing here, okay? And like I said, unfortunately I can't run a full bead on it. So we'll just come across here. And we'll throw a couple welds in there. I think I got my heat up just a little too high because we're blowing through. If you can see that little hole right there. So we'll just fill that a little bit. And I got another hole right here. Nice thing, if you leave your wire back a little bit when you're tacking, you actually end up with a little glow on the end of your wire. You can use that little bit of a glow as filler, because it will actually fill a void in the hole, and you don't have to come back and put something in behind or another little piece of metal, because, well, we don't want a little piece of metal in here that's going to raise it up. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll weld this up. And then we'll show you afterwards. Alright, so I've ground down the welds on these. Nice thing is, now that we've got one made, we can use the one that we made to line up the one that we got to build. So that's what I've done. I've clamped everything together. We've got our seam here. So I'll weld on this seam, we'll flip it over, do the other seam, repeat on this side, we'll do the same thing. We end up with two pieces. This will be the way above the bed, so that it connects the headboard and footboard together. These are just the main structure tubes for that. I have some decorative stuff that I want to do below that, but we got to get the structure stuff done first, then we can move on to the fun stuff. Alright, so now that we've got two of these made, I've also cut them down, kind of thinking about it a little bit, and I cut them at 82 inches. Because, well, you got to make your bed too. If I make it the same dimensions as what the box spring and mattress are, you can't make the bed, you can't get around there. So I've added 1.5 inches on each end, so 2 inches the overall length. So what I want to do now is actually take some of these smaller pieces. So this piece here, I want to do the same thing with it so I can get 82 inches. The difference is that I'm going to shorten it up by the width of this, which is 3/4 of an inch. So we got to be able to mount this. I can't build the entire thing as one piece because, well, we'll never get it in the house. There's no door that's 60 inches wide. So we got to make it in a couple pieces, reassemble once we put it above the bed. But yeah, I got to make two more smaller ones that will mount to these, and it gives kind of a grid work thing, stability, and somewhere to mount our fasteners so that we can put these upright pieces that go the length of the bed, not the width, the length, and be able to tie in the headboard and footboard. So I'm just going to go ahead. You see me make these ones. I'm going to do the exact same thing with these. These aren't quite, if I line up at the other end, it's flush on the other end, not quite long enough. So I'm not sure I want to add to this. So I think what I'm going to do is make two pieces, cut this in the middle. I've got enough of this material, so we'll just mesh it together. We'll end up with 82 inch and a half off, 79.5 inches, and of these. That way we can put the upright on there. So here we are, guys, and sorry, I forgot that I was documenting this on video, but so I went ahead and I took these main pieces here. I opted to put the rib nuts or insert nuts or whatever you want to call them on the outside of the frame. Not sure why. Maybe later we'll mount something, I don't know. But so we welded in the side piece here going up. Same thing with down at the other end. It's going in there. But what I want to do now is put some pieces in. So here's our center mark. So I want to put pieces in going across here. More decorative and more stability as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that. This gap that's in here is 6 inches. So I'm going to cut a bunch of 6-inch pieces. Not sure how I'm going to place them yet, but at any rate, it'll look good when we're mounting it in there. All right, so here we are. Cross pieces are in. So I went every 10 inches. That put us at center on this one, so we were every 10 inches there all the way down, which I think worked out really well. So what I'm going to do now, I want to work on these rods. And these rods actually held the screen in on the gazebo. So I've got a selection of these. I got 4 that are a little bit longer. I got 4 that are a little bit shorter. So I'm going to take the 4 that are a little bit shorter. If you can see, I'm lined up down at the far end. So that piece there is lined up at the far end. Remember, our center mark is here, but this piece comes over to this spot. So I'm going to cut these tabs off. I'm going to cut the rod down to length to the center. Then we'll put a tab in here on the center. That way we can draw the curtains and whatnot off each side when it's finally assembled and we have fabric on here. So I've got 4 of these rods. Perfect. We got 2 sides that we got to do. So we'll cut them down, weld them up just the same way that what we did these bars. And then we'll put the tab right where the seam is. That way it's a little bit extra stability. So I'll just go ahead. No sense boring you guys with the details of that. But yeah, we'll cut these tabs off, cut it to length, weld them in, and then I'll show you the finished job there. All right, so here we are. We got the rod in place now. It's welded in. Comes across here. And actually, the profile and the clearance is actually really good. So this will be the upper piece towards the ceiling. The curtains will actually hang down this way. So this will give a nice spot for things to slide across. There's our stopper for the middle. Right there's the seam that I put in there for the 2 rods to meet together. And we'll carry down the other side. And there it is. So both pieces are done now. I think it turned out quite well. I do have to drill a couple holes in the end here. It's drilled on one side, but I got to carry it through onto the other side. I'll probably use 1/4-inch bolts to go through this and the main beam that's the same size as this for the uprights. That way we can bolt these together. Everything's going to be stable, secure. So I'm just going to drill those and then we'll get onto the headboard and footboard. All right, so now that we're done with the connectors to the headboard and footboard, let's work on the headboard and footboard. So this is the decorative pieces. They're corner trims on the gazebo. So I'm going to reuse these. What we'll do is clean the paint off of the seam right here. They're 4 pieces. It comes out at 63 inches-ish for all 4 pieces. I'm going to leave them at 63 inches. The typical queen size bed is 60 inches wide. That's the mattress and box spring. So a little bit on the either side. That gives us room to actually make the bed. I'm planning on fastening these to the floor anyway, so nothing's going to move. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to clean the paint off of this stuff. Run probably 3-4 beads down each seam on both sides. Grind them down, make them smooth. I've got front and back, so headboard, footboard to do. As you can see, we got lots of material sitting over here. There's for the headboard or footboard, depending on which one we make first. The top rail will go across the headboard, footboard. There's our main posts. Got a little bit of wiggling to do with them. That one there, I think we can cut off just below where the bend is, so we'll be good in that shape. But yeah, we got lots of stuff left here. Let's just keep on carrying on. Let's make a canopy bed out of an old gazebo. All right, guys, so here we go. I spent a little bit of time cleaning the paint off of these. So we cleaned off this edge, cleaned off the top edge, because we're going to run a weld right down on right where the seam meets. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do 2 at a time, and then we'll mesh those pair to one another, make 4 pieces, 63 inches long. So just on my bench here, I'm making sure that things are level because there is a band in the middle. So there's one little band in the middle, and I'm finding that one side has a rise on it, the other side doesn't. So we want to make sure that that's going to be flush. That way we get a good fit all the way along. So I'll make sure that the bottom side's tight, the top side's right, everything's in line when we do this. So we'll go ahead, we'll clamp these. I'm going to measure out for where I want to put the beads and how long I want to put the beads. But let me clamp this up and I'll show you what we got after that. So just a couple clamps on here. I'm just feeling along this seam here to make sure that everything's flush, as well as the top and bottom here, because this is going to matter for aesthetics. So what we'll do, we'll just run a couple beads in here. I'm going to measure them out so everything looks the same as it goes along. We do have, well, it'll be 2 seams that we have, and then the pieces will be welded onto the uprights. So when we do that, we want to make sure everything's uniform, centrifugal. That way it's aesthetically pleasing. We're just not slapping this together, a couple bolts, away we go. We're making something out of nothing. My end goal on this is to spend as very little as possible on this because I have the materials. The fabric that we're going to put over the bed, we don't have, we'll have to purchase that. I do have tons of nuts and bolts, going to have to buy some spray paint because I don't want this. I don't want the shiny metal. We're going to go flat black with it. But I'll weld some of this up and measure it out, and I'll show you afterwards. Alright guys, so here we go. It's welded together. We'll get this up a little closer here. So it's welded together. I opted for 3 spots, 2-inch welds. I went center on this one, and then 2 inches up from the bottom on these ones. So front and back. So I'll grind those down. I'll do up the other pairs here, and then we'll do a front and back. That way we've got a nice headboard, footboard. It's decorative. Yeah, I'm happy with the way this is turning out. So now that we got all 4 pieces welded together, this gives us our 63 inches-ish. So I'm going to grind down these welds on both pieces, and then we'll start work on the uprights. That way we can get things fitted, get these pieces mounted into the uprights, the upper piece that's going to support up there. I got some decorative stuff that I want to do up there, so stay tuned. We got more stuff coming. So yeah, just going to grind these down. Don't need to bore you guys with that. But yeah, I think it's looking all right. All right, so I went ahead and I got carried away, forgot to record. Story of my life building this canopy bed. But the goal here is to use whatever material I can find, do it cheap. So what I got is a little bit of tin here, and this is actually off an old furnace. So I was able to cut the moon phases into it, cleaned it all up, and that was all jigsawed. About a dozen blades later, but we got through it. So this is the main frame that's going to go across the headboard and footboard. So we got 2 of these. So all I've done is clamp this in, and we're going to put a couple little stitches up in here. We'll do the same thing down in here. Put this upright. I'm going to put another one right in here. That way it ties it all together. Hopefully nothing buckles when we do this. I may end up putting something in behind or in front of the full moon here. But for the most part, I'm really liking the way this is turning out. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to weld that up, and then hopefully we can put this into the main frame for the headboard and footboard. I'll just move you over here. And again, yes, I got carried away. So there's the main frame for the headboard and footboard sitting up against the car. But it's looking pretty good. So that's headboard and footboard right there. So the pieces that I just made, they'll actually go right up here on both corners. So we'll go ahead, we'll tack that up, and then I'll get this in place, and we'll weld that in there, and then we'll have the headboard and footboard all done. All right, so we got that, the moon phases, we got that all welded in, got it ground down, put in our support pieces in here. Nice thing with the little 110 meg, you can get some really nice fine welds in here. You don't need to grind them down afterwards. But so this is the piece that is going to go at the top of the headboard and footboard. Now if I back up here, I grabbed one of the headboards or footboards, and we've added the top piece onto here. Now I was going to center these, I was going to center them on the post, but I decided not to for the mere reason that we've got curtains and drapes that we're going to put on these. So I want to be able to put them on the back side here, and we'll weld the tabs up on the top. That way we can draw our curtains on the back side of this on both sides. We'll do that with the side rails as well. When we bolt those on, we'll put the curtains to the outside. So I'll go ahead and weld this up and show you the end result. But I really like the way this is turning out. It's looking really good. Not bad for old gazebo and some furnace parts. All right, so here we go, guys. We've got the curtain rod on here. It's all welded into place. I had to make sure that this didn't stick out any further than this, because this is going to be up against the wall or vice versa, freestanding somewhere else. I don't want a front and back. I want to be able to put this wherever I want. But I'll back up here and I'll show you. It's standing. It's upright. You can see the curtain rod on the other side. And remember, this is all made out of an old gazebo. So now I got to drill some holes. I've got to drill some holes in here. So these holes that we put in before, and that way we can bolt it, because, well, this will never fit through a door if I weld it. So the side rails here, they'll be separate pieces, and then the headboard and footboard, they'll be one piece. So this will be a 4-piece canopy bed. And we had the leftover caps, so I welded those into place. This will keep any fabric that we put over the top or anything like that. That'll keep it from snagging or getting ripped. I've still got the old plugs, so we can put them up into here, and it'll make a very nice aesthetic. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead, drill some holes, and see if I got some bolts for this. All right, so here we go. Everything's painted, it's flat black. Did a little treatment on the moons, just kind of put some spray paint on a piece of cardboard, dabbed it on. Took a little bit of flat black from a distance and squirted it. But all in all, I really like the way this thing turned out. It looks fantastic. So what I'm gonna do now is disassemble, take it into the house, reassemble above our bed, and I'll show you how that looks. All right, guys, so here's the bed all mounted in here. Not much clearance on the roof, so that's why we had to measure it the way it was. But I'm quite happy with the way this thing turned out. Later on, I'm going to put LED lights along the top here, and my wife's going to get a bunch of draping, and we'll put them on the curtain rods that we mounted. Till next time, guys, like, subscribe, leave your comments. Take care.